Over the last year on this channel, we continue to look at various handheld gaming devices as I travel around the world. We have looked at many contenders to Nintendo's handheld thrones. As recently as last week, we took a look at the pros and cons of the Sony PlayStation Portable, and I gave you my opinion on whether I felt it was still worth playing today. Today, our handheld gaming journey continues. But now you all know fairly well that being the cultured world explorer and gaming pioneer that you've all grown to love and admire, that I am always somewhere interesting. I am currently still residing on the largest island in the Aegean archipelago, Crete. Today I thought I'd film around the village I live in, located on the northern coast of this island. The place has a rich and colourful history dating back to Minoan times and offers a wide range of stunning scenery, beautiful architecture and archaeological ruins, including the nearby palace of Knossos, the famous location where the brave Theseus explored the labyrinth and fought the Minotaur within. To be ultra precise though, the place I am in is Malia. Yeah. As was briefly mentioned in last week's episode, today we're going to be taking a look at Sony's next champion set to try and take down Nintendo in the great handheld platform war, the Sony Playstation Vita. As discussed in my previous video, Nintendo had dominated the handheld market throughout the late 80s, 90s and 2000s. No one had ever come close to taking a majority market share from them. When the PSP entered the fray, it was technically very successful, with over 75 million sales. But Nintendo's DS had still managed to wipe the floor with the PSP by selling double the amount of units that could shift during its life cycle. By the time 2009 had came around, rumours began to circulate that Sony was considering releasing a new gaming handheld into the market, with the company apparently working on a successor to the PSP. This new handheld was said to have been as powerful as the original Xbox and to feature a slide screen, 2 analog sticks, 2 cameras and a microphone, which all sounded bloody fantastic until it was then later alleged that the design had been reconsidered due to problems with overheating. Throughout some of 2010, Sony still had not confirmed they were going to release another device. Yoshida, president of Sony Computer Entertainment Worldwide Studios, hinted that they were working on something new. This of course added more fuel to the fire at the rumour mill. By the time December 2010 came around, the Sony Computer Entertainment CEO had mentioned they were looking to create a device catering to more demographics by including multiple input methods on future hardware, which would include buttons and a joystick for traditional gamers and touchscreens in order to appeal to smartphone users. Finally, 1 month later, in January 2011, Sony admitted they were indeed working on a new handheld device, codenamed Next Generation Portable, and had advised they were aiming for a portable unit with PS3 visual quality. However, David Coombs, who was working as the platform research manager at Sony Computer Entertainment America, clarified that it wasn't realistic to expect a handheld to run at 2 GHz like the PlayStation 3 because, and I quote, "the battery would last 5 minutes and it would probably set fire to your pants, ha ha ha." What an eloquent way of saying that an idea was bloody stupid. Other Sony engineers later clarified that the power would be roughly halfway between the PlayStation Portable and the PlayStation 3. That sounds a little more sensible now, doesn't it? However, the rumour that the device was also going to be aimed at smartphone users as well as traditional gamers was true, because the next generation portable was going to be designed to be the best of both worlds, including a 5-inch OLED touchscreen, a rear touchpad coupled with physical buttons and dual analog sticks. There will also be a mix of physical games as well as digital distribution. Digital distribution. Not always my cup of tea, but I suppose it does serve a purpose on portable devices. However, we will talk more about this later. Anyway, now back to a little history lesson. Further details were announced at Game Developers Conference 2011. Sony would be dropping the PSP's UMD disc format in favour of small game cartridges of 2GB or 4GB size variants, along with 2 cameras, facial detection, head detection and tracking capabilities. Well, dropping the UMD discs sounds good, didn't it? Did anyone really like those annoying UMD discs anyway? At E3 2011, the corporate event where the game companies tell all of you corporate slaves what they want you to pay them for, Sony officially announced the PlayStation Vita, with Vita being the Latin word for life. It was officially released in Japan on December 17, 2011, and the Europe and North American releases were both on February 22nd, 2012. However, America had a limited edition release on February 15th, 1 week earlier, because they are more special than Europe apparently. The Japanese release of the Vita was launched with 26 titles, and 100 more currently in the pipeline. If you can count, that's 126 titles, suckers, and perhaps many more. That's a very decent lineup of games. Can you dig it? I said, can you dig it? Whilst this all sounded rather impressive, if you actually looked into it though, you would have realised that some of the titles announced were technically just multiple series of mini-games already on the device, which were considered by Sony as part of the launch lineup. So meh, I suppose. The launch titles for the Japanese release, which were actually proper games, included the likes of Dynasty Warriors, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and Ultimate Marvel vs Capcom 3, which to me sounded half sensible. There were lots of reputable third parties involved, such as Koei, Naughty Dog, Nippon Ichi Software, and many more, which has always allowed Sony to release such a vast variety of games. The Vita launched in the West with 25 titles, including original titles such as Touch My Katamari, which is in no way some kind of euphemism. We also had Army Corps of Hell, which was developed by Square Enix, and Ben 10 Galactic Racing, which is clearly a throwaway title to attract mothers to buy Vitas for their undeserved snot-nosed brats they call children. The system also featured wonderful ports of games such as FIFA 12 and Rayman Origins. To be fair, it was an overall fairly strong and varied lineup, which led to 300,000 units being sold in Japan in just the first week. However, unfortunately for Sony, this didn't last long, and by the second week the sales shrunk to 73,000 units. After that, sales settled into about 12,000 units per week. And in the US, the story didn't vary much either. The system saw 200,000 units sold in the first month, before slinking down into the amount of about 50,000 units a month. It was reported that 1.2 million units were sold as of February 26, 2012, after it had been launched in most regions. Over the course of 2012, the system saw more big-name titles released, such as the cutesy Little Big Planet, the fantastic Persona 4 Golden, which I'll discuss later on, and then derpy-diddly-derp titles like Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation and Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified. Despite this, however, the Vita still only managed to sell about 4 million units worldwide in its first 10 months on the market, and then about 6 million units sold after 2 years of being on the market. So essentially it was a flop compared to the PlayStation Portable, and didn't come close at the time to matching the Nintendo 3DS, which sold approximately 17 million units in 2011 and 2012 alone. To be fair to the 3DS, 6 years on after the release, the system still sells well to this very day. The PS Vita, on the other hand, is a different kettle of fish altogether. Once 2012 was all said and done, Sony ceased releasing direct sales figures of the Vita, instead opting to release combined sales figures with the PSP. This was obviously done to try and mask Sony's first ever true gaming defeat. When it was all said and done, Sony only managed to shift just over 14 million units, which makes the system sales more embarrassing than that of even the GameCube. However, As we fully well know on this channel, units shifted doesn't necessarily always correlate with the system's overall quality. So now it's time to take a look if the PlayStation Vita is worth playing today. Yeah! Let's start by looking at the device itself and how it controls. As you can see, the PlayStation Vita is actually a rather dashing and handsome piece of kit on first inspection. The inputs include the very jazzy touchscreen, the rear touchpad, and 6-axis motion sensing, which basically means to the feeble-minded that it knows when it's being tipped around like a poor man's Stella Artois. The system also, for some reason, includes a 3-axis electronic compass, for just in case you get lost whilst playing the damn thing, for all you rookie adventurers out there. The system, as expected, obviously has a D-pad along with 16 buttons, which include the triangle, circle, cross, square, L and R shoulder button, start select, and the PlayStation home button, etc. A welcome addition to the Vita is also that it has 2 analog sticks as opposed to 1 like the PlayStation Portable. The system is comfortable to hold and easy to use, but I do have one complaint. One huge complaint actually. The rear touchpad makes my blue blood absolutely boil. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. What on earth were they bloody thinking? Why couldn't they just add 2 more buttons? This bloody implement doesn't work well at all when you're playing most games. For example, it is a struggle to use them in most PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 ports. Like, why even release games that don't work properly on the system because the right buttons aren't available? For example, on the Vita, I can't get past the first seed mission on Final Fantasy VIII when I have to run away from that giant black crab thingy. I can't run away from the bloody machine due to the temperamental nature of the Vita's sometimes awful controls. It's now made God of War unplayable too, so I've had to stop playing that and now have to wait to play it when I get back to my mansion on my PlayStation 2 instead. It's meant to be bloody backwards compatible, but they didn't bloody think that through, because the older games don't function very well with the awful L2 and R2 replacement touches. And whilst I'm complaining about weaknesses the Vita presents, do you know what else is annoying? The memory cards. You see, it's all well and good releasing a portable system that offers a large library of downloadable content, but what is the bloody point of it when the memory cards fill up so quickly? You can hardly fit any content on them in the first place. If I recall, these memory cards were very expensive on release, so what is the point in paying out money for digital downloads if you're just constantly paying out for memory cards to put the games on? Seems completely stupid and nonsensical to me. You may as well have just bought physical copies of the games instead in the first place. But yes, there is an awesome selection of PlayStation 1 games available to download on the system, but beware of a severe lack of storage the Vita offers and the absolutely terrible L2 and R2 touchpads. You would probably be best off just playing the games on the original hardware. Another thing I don't like about the Vita is how susceptible to scratches the screen seems to be. My Vita screen gets scratched to buggery, which is not a problem I experienced with the 3DS, as it was designed much better for portability. The whole point of handheld gaming is being able to game on the go, so I shouldn't have to wrap up systems in cotton wool to stop them from getting damaged. I know I'm going to get people saying that I've had one for years and mine's not been scratched. Well, you bastards probably haven't been going around 5 continents all year, have you? I've been dragging mine around the world all year with my other travel devices, but most of them are fine. These scratches actually drive me bloody mad, and don't you dare tell me I should have bought a case for it because I'll explode. I've already had to pay out for bloody memory cards. Like, how many things am I expected to pay out for to be able to play this thing? My bloody 3DS doesn't need a carry case because they thought out the design better. The screen bloody closes so it doesn't get damaged. No wonder it bloody dragged the Vita through the bushes. This thing has a lot of flaws when you start looking at it, and maybe Sony should have been less focused on creating a powerful system and focused more on convenience. But saying that, that seems to be the big problem in modern gaming these days anyway. People prefer these souped up powerful games devices with long load times, system updates and tutorials etc, whilst I'd just rather just have something I can pick up and play straight away, which is why I love traditional handheld gaming, I suppose. As much as the system clearly has a lot of niggly weaknesses, the system does appear to attract a lot of vocal fanboys these days, who I am sure will feel the compulsion to address my complaints in my comment section. Now we have got the system's weaknesses out the way, let's talk about the system's strengths. The main one being the system's fantastic library of games. Ridiculously, and this stat may shock you, across digital releases not including PS1 and PSP downloads, the system offers over 1,400 games. That is absolutely insane for a system with such a short life cycle. Madness in my opinion, especially when people say, oh, I don't like the Vita, it hasn't got any games. Sure, a lot of these may be Android style shovelware, but let's look at some of my favourite releases for the PlayStation Vita. I'll start off with the game that gave me an excuse to buy the system in the first place, Final Fantasy X HD. Now, back in the day I was a big fan of Final Fantasy X on the PlayStation 2, but with the PS3 re-release, I didn't see the point on treading old ground again from as early as just one generation before. Playing it on the Vita, on the other hand, was a much more enticing option, as I could play the whole game again, but this time on the move. I have always enjoyed JRPGs on the go, and the opportunity to play Final Fantasy X in HD in the palm of my hand was a welcoming one. If you are yet to play this classic, you take the role of Charlie from Busted as you go on a pilgrimage from temple to temple in a quest to defeat the monster known as Sin. This is a great game which features a great story that mostly revolves around criticising and looking at the corruptions of organised religion. The religion of the Yevon could pretty much be interchangeable with any real religion we have on Earth. So kudos to Square for coming up with something a little bit more compelling than simply kid with anime hair and teenage angst must save the crystals. Music, battle system, environment, everything's good here. So if you have missed Final Fantasy X, why not give it a go on the Vita? I promise you won't be disappointed. Super Stardust Delta, known as Star Strike Delta in Japan, is a twin-stick shoot-'em-up video game. Players control a starship orbiting a planet. The planet's orbit acts as the playfield filled with asteroids and enemies for the player to destroy. As a Vita launch title, Delta puts its hooks into players immediately, delivering an experience which is fresh and compelling. The ship has several different weapons, smart bombs, a temporary shield and a speed boost system. The ship also has two projectile weapons of opposite polarities that can be switched between on the fly. Other unique features of Super Stardust Delta are that the view can be tilted to see round the planet, and the ship's speed boost system has a slow-mo feature that enables players to navigate the ship with more precision whilst boosting. Overall, this game is extremely critically acclaimed, and it is a must-own title for all PlayStation Vita owners. Everything about this little game is absolutely top-notch. Wacommoulay is a 2013 action platforming video game developed and published by Drinkbox Studios. In Wacommoulay, players control Juan, who is no relation to famous Mexican wrestler Juan Cena. Juan must fight his way through various enemies and obstacles in order to rescue El Presidente's daughter. Juan can attack enemies using basic attacks and can perform various grapple attacks when they are stunned, dealing more damage or throwing them towards other enemies. The game is set in a small village in Mexico. As mentioned, you play as Juan, who is a gay farmer who is in love with El Presidente's daughter. An evil Charo skeleton named Carlos Calaca attacks the village and kidnaps El Presidente's daughter. Juan is killed by Carlos during his attempt to stop him and winds up in the land of the dead. There is a mysterious luchador named Tostada who gives Juan a mysterious mask that transforms him into a powerful luchador and brings him back to the world of the living. It is now up to Juan to stop Carlos from sacrificing El Presidente's daughter in a ritual that would allow him to take both the living and the dead worlds. It's super dynamic cooking time, yeah! This quirky title is certainly worth your time of day, and it's different to say the least. Velocity 2X is a shoot-'em-up video game developed and published by Future Lab. Whether you are zipping along vertically in your Quarp jet or horizontally in the new on-foot segments, the game offers fluidity, split-second reactions and a sense of exhilaration. This game is much more than a simple shooter. Velocity 2X melds exploration, puzzle solving and platforming all together into one big cohesive package. The game also features a unique teleportation mechanic to create a diverse shmup that looks familiar but feels like nothing else you've played previously. If you like shooters, you will most likely get caught up in Velocity 2X's distinct rhythm. Many people look at the PlayStation Vita as the definitive JRPG handheld, and whilst I have already spoke of Final Fantasy X HD, there is another PlayStation 2 remake I thought was also worth bringing up. This amazing Vita port of Persona 4 actually manages to go above and beyond its predecessor. The game features extra missions, new personas and adds characters, altogether adding more depth to the gameplay and story than ever before. The HD upgrade even adds a shiny new coat of paint to the already great visuals of this game. If you are still unfamiliar with the franchise, the game features a group of high school friends attempting to solve a murder mystery. Essentially think Scooby-Doo but for dirty weebos. The game features an addictive mix of turn-based roleplay and action along with some interesting social discourse. Many people strongly believe that Persona 4 Golden is the best experience you can have on the Vita. So that was my Vita history, critique and look at some of the games. What are your recommendations to play on the Vita? I promised at the beginning of this video I would let you know if the system is worth playing today, and after spending a lot of time with the platform, I have now come to a conclusion. The Vita may have its weaknesses, such as odd memory cards for storage and questionable touch controls on the back of the unit, but overall there is a lot of fun to be had with it. A deep library of games, tons of JRPGs and fantastic overall visuals have certainly earned the Vita a place in history as one of the very best non-Nintendo handhelds of all time. Who knows, maybe if this thing was handled differently at launch, then Sony wouldn't have lost faith in their device so fast. Either way, I still have faith in the Vita, and it's certainly worth playing today. Yeah! Thank you for watching today's video. It's always fun to cover underappreciated handheld consoles whilst travelling the world. Shout out to Shizuka Kobayashi, Retail Archaeology, Andrew Bazanski, Pizza Dawn, Mike Frost, Edward O'Reilly and all of my other patrons. Thank you for all of your support, yeah! If you want to be added to this prestigious list, then check out my Patreon page. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to like, comment and hit the subscribe button. Ta-ta and farewell.